Red Ray Gun Limited presents
The Benji and Nick Show. Hello.
Hello.
Good morning.
Good afternoon.
Good evening.
Good day.
Good night.
Good goodness.
Loch Ness.
Crash burn.
He's gone. He's out of it.
That was the Loch Ness game. It's not a game. It's not about Loch Ness.
But this is the Benji and Nick Show, your number one podcast for vintage television in the known world. Because there are bits of the world that we don't know. There might be others. You know, there could be other
I didn't
podcasts.
know about those.
Well, you wouldn't, would you? Here's the thing. I'm not Nick.
Oh, and I'm not Benji. I was going to say it, but you seem to be starting, so...
Oh, well, thank you very much.
Did you?
Good bit of respect there.
I can't even remember whether you explained what this podcast was, but
I did. This is the number one vintage place.
Yeah, you did.
Yeah.
Sorry, I was just zoned out.
Well, it happens. You know, we do this every week. It's sort of like this has become a bit of cult television in itself, hasn't it? Really.
What are we talking about this week, Benji?
Well, you know, for those that don't join us on this, we normally talk about vintage television, TV from the past, TV you might remember, TV you might have forgotten. This week we're going on something. It's a weird one because is it vintage TV? This is what people have been emailing all over the world to say. Is it vintage TV? Well, I don't know. We're doing Jonathan Creek, which I guess you could. I mean, as we've discussed before, dear listeners, vintage television really is. It's in the mind. It's the mind. It's in the mind, and you know what one might think is vintage telly to one person isn't. This is 1997, and I have to say, I thought it was earlier. I thought it was about 1994, but given that 1997 is a long time ago, I think we're okay.
Well, I could just listen to this all day, Benji. It's so profound.
Well, that's part of my charm, you see. That's why I'm sat here talking to people, because I suppose in a sort of What? No, it's gone now. No.
It's gone.
That's it.
It's gone.
That's the power of the mind, you see.
The power. It's the mind.
It's the mind.
Shelley Dean, our reviewer, constant guest star from over the seas, will be here with us when we're chatting about Jonathan Creek, and she will give us the lowdown on Jonathan Creek. She'll explain, all about it. She'll have researched it at newspapers.com or something. She'll also tell us and you all about our Patreon page, where you can become a patron and all the things you can get. Yeah.
Tin of peas, some old rope. There's a bike down the road which somebody's left, which has made me furious.
Furious. But you can have it if you sign up.
You can take it away, get some bolt cutters. It's yours. It's not a problem. But
I think that's fair.
Yeah, whatever. No skin off my nose. Now, one thing you can't have are these emails, which we're going to read to you now.
Yes.
This one here is from Phil Steer, sent on the 17th of the 5th, 2021, the year of our Lord 2041, the future, no less.
And sent to podcast at nicholasbriggs.com.
Yes, send them over. Send some emails in. Get them in. For goodness sake, what are you lot playing at? I'll get nasty. I can't remember when I was meant to...
I'm nasty.
I know, I'm
nasty.
nasty.
To get me. Yes.
There's a round of applause, because I can't remember why I was doing it, but I was going to, but there we go. I came across a lovely example today of just how much television has changed in the past 40 years. I was trying to do 40 years... years. I was watching the last episode of the second series of All Creatures Great and Small, Merry Gentlemen, from the 24th of December 1978. In the scene in question, a farmer's wife gives Siegfried a slice of her Christmas cake to try, and she does each year. Although, unbeknown to him, this time it's actually her sister's cake. The eyes of the family and James Herriot, and indeed us, the viewers, are on him as he inspects, smells, prods, and tastes the cake, and considers his conclusion. This all takes 1 minute and 35 seconds. Yes, I went back and timed it. 1 minute and 35 seconds, of which not a word is spoken, and essentially nothing happens.
Hold on, he's inspecting, smelling, prodding, and tasting.
But not a word of that, though. The longer it lasts, the greater the anticipation of what Siegfried is going to say when he passes judgment on the sister's cake. Glorious. Perhaps I'm wrong, I often am, but I cannot imagine a programme today giving so much space and time for something so seemingly inconsequential to play out. And yet, it was this that made it all so amusing and enjoyable, so much more than any number of words or activity. Sometimes, oft-times, less is more. Many thanks for the show. All best wishes, Phil. It does happen, isn't it? It's funnier. There are some shows that do things like that. You think, why, you know?
Well, I was just thinking over lunch, actually, Benji. I was watching, as you know, because I sent you a picture of it, The Lotus Eaters.
Fantastic.
And I was watching it. I figured that I'd seen the first series, but I'm all at sea, no pun intended, because a lot of it is at sea.
It is at sea,
with episode 1 of the second series. And there's no dialogue for an awful long time. There are a lot of meaningful looks, none of which mean anything to me at all. There's the Lotus Eaters theme.
I know. I want the nice Greeky bits of music, not the strings. I want all this sort of... That's better.
Yeah, a bit of Demis Roussos there.
That's very quiet, though, isn't it? That's one of those ones. Lots of people not doing much.
That's precisely what I was saying. Although, you see, I would like to take issue with the idea, because once upon a time, oldsters like me were saying, television's so fast these days, it should slow down, everything. But I've noticed that television has slowed right down now. Everything seems to take a very long time on television. Episodes go by and people have meaningful conversations. I think sometimes I want it to be a bit punchier again.
I think it's because we've gone down the American route now, where content is king. There has to be a lot of it. If a TV show runs, it has to run for a long time, and it has to go. Gone are the days now where you could get a one-season wonder. Now if it's successful, you have to have more.
It has to go on and on. And
often at the expense of the viewer, I think, because you get to a point you think, I'll be doing this again. This was a show about murder. Now there's 15 murders. It gets so. I totally agree. I mean, with something like the Lotus Eaters, Ian Hendry, who plays the main bloke in it, Mr. Shepherd himself. He is a master at doing the cake prodding. He will be in the bar. He'll walk down in the morning. He'll open the windows, walk over to the bar.
Usually with his top off,
which isn't too nice, to be honest, leering at the young waitress. But he'll go and make a drink or something, or sort out some bottles. And it's so flat, and I can see why some people might not like that, but I love it because you can see exactly what he's thinking.
Well, Public Eye is one for that. You get whole sequences with Alfred Burke, that's his name, wasn't it, the actor? Alfred Burke, yeah. And he's just sort of making a cup of tea, and he makes it in real time on the set, doesn't he? He boils the kettle, then he forgets the milk and goes and gets it, or then has to go to the shop to get it, and it's just... Yeah,
he's always fiddling, like sweeping something or picking something up, isn't it?
Yeah, writing notes as well. While he's on the phone going, yeah, okay, Mr. Brown, yeah. So your cat is missing. No, I mean, I've not got a lot on at the moment, so I will. Okay, well, why don't you come round? Come round tomorrow afternoon, and there's just this whole scene goes on like that. And I have to say, Peter Davison and I had a conversation about it ages ago, and he said, God, he'd love to play that part. He said the way he could make nothing completely addictive to watch, incredible.
It's so true. It's and you pick the absolute perfect example there of his phone mannerism there on the screen, because it is, you can watch him, and not only do you completely believe it, but it's sort of mesmerising. I remember this because there's only, when I think of phone acting, there's two actors. He's one of them, and also the other guy is in Coronation Street. What's his name? Alec Gilroy, whose real name is, what's his name? Ray Barraclough? Roy Barraclough?
Yeah.
He's another master at that, at doing the phone
acting
is
quite a skill, actually.
It is, and it's all. I'll tell you, in my opinion, as an actor, in my opinion, it's all about the timing. It's all about the timing.
You have to imagine what you're hearing. I mean, that's the bottom line. You have to hear in your head what the other person's saying. That's why I've done loads of thrillers on stage, and inevitably, especially in Francis Durbridge plays, there are loads of phone calls. I mean, loads. The phone is always ringing. I would just mention a hoary old story where. On the first night of a production of some Francis Durbridge play, a friend of mine was playing the lead. And when you're the lead male in a Francis Durbridge play, you're on stage the whole time. The phone rings, the doorbell goes, and you've only just learnt your lines in a week. And sometimes it's a little bit, you're reliant on what happens next to know. And he had it in his head that he was pretty certain that the next thing that was going to happen was that the doorbell would ring. But the DSM, the deputy stage manager, whose job it is to make those ringing things by pressing a button, she accidentally pressed the phone because the two buttons are next to each other. She pressed the phone. So, my mate Ben, he just went straight to the phone thinking,
no.
What scene is this? He picked up the phone and said, hello? And he said, for a moment, I genuinely expected someone to say something to me to help me out. Because I just said, hello. And he said, and I stood there. And then, of course, the DSM suddenly thought, oh, God, that's the wrong button. So she pressed the doorbell and he said, sorry, I've got to go. There's someone at the door. Put the phone down thinking, and then the door opens and someone comes in and he's thinking, oh, it's that scene with the photographer. Fine, I
thought you were going to say he picks up the phone and goes, hello? There's someone at the door. Thank you. It just goes.
That's a little bit like the when actors forget their lines and don't want to take a prompt, especially in a thriller. You could, and I've seen this happen before. People suddenly go, "Hold on a sec. I think I heard something in the kitchen. Just wait here, darling." Goes into the kitchen, goes up to the DSM and goes, "What page are we on? Quick, help me!" It just gets the scripts. It's kind of right. Okay. Oh yeah. Okay, thanks. Goes back on. It's all right. It was nothing. Anyway, as I was saying about the whiskey, and meanwhile, the actress who's left on stage is like, what do I do now? He's left me alone. I think I'll light a cigarette. That's the usual thing.
That's the classic thing, which you
light
probably
a cigarette, make a whole business of it, and looking for the ashtray. And
which probably, can you even do that anymore? Do they expect they're probably trying to make it so you can't smoke as much on stage?
Yeah, that's
anymore.
right. You have to, even if you can have herbal cigarettes, but you have to put a note in the program warning people about it.
Oh wow, that's interesting.
And people like to use those e-cigarettes. The trouble is with e-cigarettes, they don't burn down. They don't burn down. I actually saw a play put on in the West End, admittedly not a brilliant production, where they just pretended to smoke. And I wanted to walk out of the theatre because I just thought... Did
they have anything in their fingers, or did they just...
Oh, no, they had cigarettes, but they didn't light them.
It's just ridiculous, isn't it, really?
It's totally ridiculous.
There's a lot to be said for a good, well-placed cigarette in a production.
Oh, especially a vintage production, yeah.
Because that's what it was. That's what they do. Yeah. They're always lighting cigarettes and drinking out of decanters and... bottles
I
and
remember
drawers.
the days when me and my mates were so poor and we were doing these acting jobs for very little money, less than equity minimum, and the actors would try and get as many cigarettes into the show as possible, which meant that they didn't have to buy so many because the company would buy the cigarettes. And one of the stage manager's jobs was to sort of patrol backstage before the production to make sure that actors weren't stealing the cigarettes, just sticking them in their pocket and, having them for later. And everyone did. I just remember, directing some of those plays and they go, I think she'd probably go and get a cigarette now, Nick. What do you think? And I just go, yes, probably, okay. She go, yeah, I think so. Probably another one after that as well. Yeah, I see what you're doing.
I see you.
Oh, I've managed to get 4 practical cigarettes into the second act, they'd say.
Probably should smoke now. You're playing the 5-year-old daughter. Probably two cigarette job, isn't it?
Yeah, and a cigar, yeah.
You're the cat. What are you... This is a production of Noddy.
Yeah, big ears. So smoke would probably come out of his ears, wouldn't it?
Yeah. I'd have 50 of them.
But yeah, that's the way to do it. You have to imagine. I did work with a terrible actress once who she used to pick up the phone and just reel all the lines off in one go and not leave a gap. She used to go, what, no, hello, goodbye, and put the phone down. You think,
What?
Are you serious? But she also could never interrupt you.
She just didn't have that ability to. She obviously.
So if you had to say, what on earth are you think? And she had to say, look, no, I'm not talking to you today. You'd say, what on earth are you thinking about, darling, by doing that? And you just keep making. And as you made up more and more words, she'd look at you with this quizzical look on her face, like, what are you doing? And you just think, for goodness sake, speak. Yeah.
You fool, speak.
Or if you had to interrupt her, she would always say the end of the line like it was the end of the line. Like if she was saying, what on earth are you doing? That she'd go, what on earth are you do? Like, she'd say. I won't name her because that would be shameful.
I was going to say there's one actress in something, I won't name her, but I can't stand the way that she acts because she does this thing. I don't know how common it is, Nick, you'll know better than me, but she's one of those people that you can see that when you're if there's a scene going on, she knows the lines really well, but she'll start her lines before they've finished, or in a way in which if I say, so, how have you been today? Before he's even said today, she'll say, well, I went round the shops and I went and did this and I went and did that. Or you'll say something like, have you ever heard of the something or another? And she would have already said, she'll be, yes, and so you think, I know you know the lines, but for goodness sake, nobody reacts.
Listen, that's the thing. That's what Christopher Eccleston was saying relatively recently. He said, the best actors are listeners. And that's it. Obviously, you have to have learnt the lines, but just listen to what the other person's saying to you. And it's a lovely, relaxing moment to hear them speak to you, and it gives you the impetus for what you're going to say and how you're going to say it. But yeah, the actor I was talking about, the what, no, hello person, she also, while you were speaking, if you ever looked at her, she was mouthing your lines.
Oh, God. Yes,
very slightly. She's going... I couldn't work out what it was. I thought there was something wrong with her. And then someone said, no, it's because she's learnt your lines as well, but she's mouthing them to make sure that you get to the end of it before she speaks. So I mean, there's some people should not be let loose on a stage, frankly.
I mean, the thing is, and the sad thing is that,
these were professional productions, I might add.
But in both these cases, these are people that do learn their lines. They know the stuff. Like, hats off to them for knowing it, but they just kind of misunderstand. As what's the word? They don't understand the art of it. Is in the acting side of it, is being convincing. Because if you're not even convincing the person you're acting against, then how are you going to convince a house full of people? It's
a lot of
funny,
people I encountered in theatre were only interested in the nice clothes. I remember, again, it was the same. Sorry, it's this poor person who is unnamed. The same actor in the middle of a rehearsal. She just stopped. She said to the director, whatever his name was, I won't name his name. Can I just ask? I think she'll have a nice frock, won't she? And the director said, well, what's that got to do with it? She said, well, I don't want to stand behind the sofa because then you won't be able to see the frock. So I should probably come round here, shouldn't I? So that the frock's on view. That's so wrong in so many ways, isn't it?
So this isn't a fashion show.
The director found it very funny anyway.
John Pertwee wasn't in the stage play and thought, yes, well, I think they should see my cape.
Well, now that I'm not so sure about. Yeah, he may well have done.
So true. Quite.
So, shall I read another email?
Yeah, quite.
This is from our dear friend Carl Scutt, who... this was sent a while ago. We've moved on with the debate with Carl since then, but it's an interesting one to read. It was on the 17th of April in the year 0841. Good evening, gentlemen.
Several monks ago.
Yeah.
Well, a monk ago.
Do the monk.
Oh,
nice. Good evening, gentlemen. Z-Cars. We were talking about Z-Cars.
Z-Cars, yes.
If you were a kid in the 60s, then Z-Cars was part of the soundtrack, even if you didn't watch it.
Classic.
Now, I assume
it's
my
a classic.
parents... Well, sorry, what?
I said it's a classic.
That's a classic.
Sorry, we classic.
Aye. Now, I assume my parents did, as the theme tune is instantly recognisable, and I did know of the series, so it was with great interest I watched the first episode and wasn't disappointed. Seeing Stratford-Johns and Frank Windsor driving around in a police Ford Anglia was a hoot. The grittiness of the characters and the area in which they lived and worked. I even flinched at Janie Steele with her black eye, knowing who was responsible for that, which is surprising considering some of the content I watch these days. But this was 1962, and I suppose it just wasn't seen on TV screens back then. Despite everything that was going on in the episode, the one thing that really caught my eye was the bottle of brown sauce on Steele's table.
I noticed that. I did notice that.
With the wording blacked out, screenshot attached. Unfortunately not here. I can only assume that because it was screened on BBC, there was no advertising of any sort. That's exactly what they used to do. They used to blot things out or fiddle
Turn them
around.
round.
Yeah. The last word on Z-Cars will come from my mum, who, after I sent her the link to watch the episode on YouTube, sent this email. How wonderful. I don't like Sundays, and this has brightened my day. I know that compared to today's shows, those of that era are pretty shabby. But so what? I enjoy them. Many thanks. Keep up the good work. Oh, that's nice, isn't it?
There we go.
I'm so sorry, Carl. We didn't get around to reading this until now. She has carried on watching Z-Cars on YouTube ever since.
Wow.
All in all, Z-Cars was a great treat. Many thanks. Yours in telegoodness, Carl. Sent with Proton Mail.
Ultra secure Swiss-based email service.
Swiss-based.
They are indeed.
Nice one, Carl. Thank you.
Yeah, nice one. Thanks for saying that. It just goes to show, see, the Benji and Nick show impacts lives that we have no idea. You know, Carl's mother is watching Z-Cars. Fantastic.
Now, there's some interesting typos in this one. See if you can get through it, though.
We can do this. The subject of this one is shoestring, or string of the shoe. It just says shoestring. It was sent on the 15th of the 4th, 2021, the year of our Lord, 1954, just after the war. Coca-Cola's popular. Lots of people driving around in open-back Cadillacs.
That's in America, I think.
That's in America. Yeah, over here, I don't know, it's Housewife's Choice, shipping forecast, soggy sandwiches and...
Can I have a soggy sandwich, please?
Can I have a double S, please? It says, Dear Shelley, Nick and Benji, a quick recommendation for future viewing, Shoestring, a series featuring Trevor Eve as Eddie Shoestring, a down at the heel, aren't they always, private detective, taken on by Radio West to be their private ear, helping listeners with their problems. It's created by Robert Banks Stewart. It ran for 2 series in 1979 to 1980 and was filmed on the streets of Bristol before it became the boho capital of the West Country. So true.
What does that mean? I don't know what that means.
It's kind of become like quite a hip and trendy, cool cat place to kind of go now.
I don't know what the term boho means.
Bohemian.
Oh, okay.
I think it does. I think it means bohemian.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense.
Often shown down as run down and seedy, clearly the new romantics never got to Bristol. The first episode features a Doctor Who companion from the 1960s playing a faded film star who is now a DJ on Radio West, whilst the second features a star from a classic 1960 British kitchen sink film. Robert Banks Stewart repeated the format a few years later when he created Bergerac, which is now on BritBox, by the way, if you want to get your Bergers around that rack, in the rather more glamorous surroundings of the Channel Islands. I've never been to the Channel Islands, probably never will.
I have.
Have you? Is it nice?
It's really nice.
No Germans there anymore?
No Germans there anymore. No, they
were there for a brief spell. Two television series on that, aren't there?
Yeah.
Island at War, and
there's a fantastic museum there of all the underground tunnels that the Germans put in there.
Why did they put underground tunnels there?
A base.
Oh wow! They loved underground bases, didn't they?
They did, yeah. Well,
really
to
into the
protect
sort of
themselves from
supervillain stuff, isn't it?
I've only been to Jersey. I've not been to Guernsey. I would thoroughly recommend it.
I'll have to go. We'll go one day. We'll do a podcast. I'll say that about everywhere. We'll do a podcast there one day. It'll be part of our direct-to-DVD series, The Benji and Nick Show on the Road. Yeah, I think so.
It's expensive, that.
Of course it is. Of course it is.
Yeah. You can't live there unless you're a millionaire or were born there.
You get an invitation, don't you? Or something like that. You can be invited, because I seem to recall my dad got invited to when we were younger to move and work in Jersey.
Wow.
And he didn't do it. I know. Can't believe he didn't do it, looking back.
Well, it's, your world becomes a lot smaller.
Yes, quite.
But it's beautiful. It's beautiful and interesting.
Definitely.
And it was, I had a very nice holiday there. I'm not very good at holidays, and that was one of the best holidays I've had in recent years.
A good sort of, does it qualify as going abroad? I suppose on the, I don't think it does.
It is officially Britain, although it's kind of, they don't have the NHS there, for example.
Yeah, no, that's interesting, isn't it?
It is. All the names
watching a bit
are
of
French.
Shoestring now.
Well, here's the thing. I might have said all this before. I don't know. Or have I said it on the podcast? I watched that first episode of Shoestring. It's bizarrely, it's William Russell playing a rather nasty piece of work.
He's fantastic in everything, is our William.
Yeah, he is. But it's really disturbing seeing him saying rude words and stuff because William, or Russell Enoch, as is his real name, isn't like that at all. He's such a gentleman, such a pleasant fellow. So it's odd to see that. And there's the whole thing about, how Trevor Eve decided not to do it anymore, and he really upset the BBC and therefore didn't work for them for a very long time. And basically Robert Banks Stewart took the Shoestring format and retooled it very slightly to make Bergerac. Bergerac is such a similar series in style and feel, and also the character. I think Shoestring is recovering from a breakdown, and Bergerac's a recovering alcoholic.
Yeah, it's the same sort of tropes, isn't
it? Very, very similar. But of course, they got to, film in a lot more glamorous place. Yeah, Bergerac is so incredibly dated, far more dated than you'd expect.
I haven't sat down and watched it in a very, very long time.
Yeah,
and my only real memories of Bergerac are it's just being on the telly sometimes. Maybe we should do a Bergerac.
We should. And Shoestring's incredibly dated. They're all these old series take your breath away with racism and sexism. They are really much more so than the stuff in the 60s. I suppose maybe we expect that more, but it's something that's far more recent, and you kind of go, oh, goodness me. It's like, as I mentioned a couple of weeks ago, watching Between the Lines, which is 1990 or early 90s. And, and they want to deal with contentious issues, and there's a lot about, sexism, feminism and racism in there, and they're trying to do the right thing, and it's cringe-worthy because it's, by our own sensitivities now, it's all so wrong,
well, there's a very similar thing in series 2 of London's Burning, actually, where they do the racism episode with and in fairness, it ends up going to court in the next episode, I think, like it goes on, but it's really uncomfortable to watch for all sorts of different reasons. Actually, what is interesting is in the first series, racism is really casual in that and a sort of joke. Like one of the characters is just sort of jokingly saying these things to another bloke, who, a chap on there, and even his nickname is horrible, So it's interesting they went from that, and within 2 years they were like, we need to actually do a proper sit down and tackle this because that's not on.
I seem to remember there was a lot of casual racism about the local Chinese takeaway as well, wasn't there?
Yes, there was a lot of casual racism in that, especially in the movie, especially. I think when the series came around,
that was more hard hitting, though, wasn't it? It was a TV movie.
Yeah, it was grittier. Whereas I suppose when the TV series came in, it became a little bit more generalised. But it's just a different world, isn't it? Really, different world now. Thankfully.
Yes. Times move on.
Times move on, but telly is forever. Put that on a shirt.
Yeah, I don't know what it means, but yeah, good.
Profound enough. I suppose it's time we should invite Shelley Dean to discuss Jonathan Creek.
And all that jazz.
Jonathan Squeak.
Let's do that. Hello.
Welcome, Shelley Dean.
Then.
Hello there.
Shelley's arrived.
Alrighty.
All right. Charlie bit my finger.
Charlie beat my finger.
You sound Lithuanian.
Yeah, you do sound a bit Lithuanian.
You should have heard me doing my French this morning. I was doing something else, and I was like just saying it out loud, and I was like, "Ho ho ho! It's a French accent."
now deemed inappropriate, probably.
I'd like to apologise to all French people listening. Yes. So, what's first?
Bonjour, je m'appelle Michel. Et toi?
Bonjour. Bonjour. Bonjour.
Bonjour.
Bonjour. What's first on your agenda today, Shelley?
First on the agenda, we've got this week's patron paper. Surprise! But I'm going to change it up just a smidge today.
Do you mind, Smidge?
No, Smidge, I checked with Smidge. Smidge was fine. We're talking about Jonathan Creek today, which is a relatively quote-unquote new show in comparison to most of the stuff that we talk about.
Quite.
And it made me start thinking about the question of how old does a TV show or movie need to be considered vintage? And so I did some research. Of course I did. And the internet came up with the answer for a physical object, like a car or a piece of furniture, needs to be at least 50 years old. But I couldn't find anything out.
50 years old? That's
for physical object, like a car, like a vintage car.
I disagree.
Yeah.
I disagree completely. But
well,
I knew you would.
was the general consensus.
Rover 75. That's vintage, and that's old and cruddy, isn't it? So it's got to be vintage.
Well, but that would then fill into what can make something be considered vintage. And so since I couldn't find anything about TV shows or movies as far as what makes something a classic or vintage or retro, I decided to post the question in the form of a poll on our Patreon.
Oh.
And so I gave 4 options as far as how old. So 20, 30, 40, and 50 years are the cutoffs. And 20 years received the most responses, most votes, and 30 years came in a close second, 40 got none, and 50 received just a couple. So some of the comments that the patrons said, I'm going to just rattle off a few of these because they were interesting. Alex Pass said, vintage doesn't necessarily mean old, but it's more of a sign of quality.
Oh.
Like a bottle of wine or something.
Right. And so then Carl Scott said, vintage is of high quality and lasting value. And then he said, okay, maybe not high quality when it comes to some vintage shows, but the value is there considering how revered they still are today, which is very true. Chris David said, Chris David said, I think it just has to be of value and of a style that is no longer being produced for it to go from just well made to vintage. And Laura Valinsky said, age isn't really the main criteria. It's age and style and value, plus a dose of quality and a dash of fun, which I love that one. And then
Very elegant.
And then Duncan Wilson said, you can include the 80s, but that's retro rather than vintage, which then got me into the whole retro thing.
I mean, but they're
so
all,
what do you guys think?
They're all words, though, aren't they? I would.
They definitely are words.
Yes.
I think you're
but
right.
I would say like vintage and retro are. I suppose they are two. They could be considered two different things, but I just shoved them all in the same category. We just talk about old stuff, really, old telly. So I would say that because we don't. We're doing Jonathan Creek, which is 1997. Right. I would say that's old, but it's not vintage. But it's not retro either. But it is old.
That's
I
where you
suppose.
start getting into the semantics of it. Is where does the line get drawn? So does something in early 2000s? Exactly. Technically, it's 21 years old if you're getting, which,
Yeah, no, you are right.
Yeah. It's one of those, I don't
know. I mean, I just think everything after 2000 it didn't get as fun and exciting because society hasn't changed. Like, mobile phones became a thing and then internet became a thing. It's like we've not really moved that far on anymore.
Well, of course, it's always surprising to see how much we have or haven't changed. And for me, I think it's really difficult to define. It's fun debating it, but I don't think you can ever come to an absolute answer, can you?
I mean,
really?
because it's just up to personal opinion as to, as what Benji just said about things not changing so much since the early 2000s. You can say that a lot has changed since then, and yet you can say a lot hasn't. So I guess it all boils down to hindsight. You don't realize it until after.
I mean, I got married.
Me too.
Yeah, there you go, you see.
So,
interesting.
Yeah.
Interesting.
But that's just one of the things that you can do if you become a patron subscriber. You get to participate in polls such as these, and you get to spout off your opinions on things such as these.
Express.
Yes.
I think that's the word I'm looking for. You get to go on a bit and just say stuff.
Well, so if you, for just as little as £1 a month, you can join in on all of the fun, and we will love you forever for your patronage. And there are 5 subscription tiers to choose from, varying perks for each, from discounts on merchandise to shout outs on the podcast. You can even hear the podcast 1 whole week ahead of everyone else. So just go over to patreon.com, patreon.com/The Benji and Nick Show. And we'd love for you to join us over there.
Yeah, have a peek, see what the tiers are, and if there's something that piques your interest, then get involved. One thing we will say now is that our Discord is open, so you can come in for no fees, whatever. It's an open community for the general sections. If our patron subscribers will get access to additional rooms and places to talk about other things, and we sometimes drop in and say hello. We do a Q&A now as well once a month, which is super exciting. And if you want to be a part of our Discord and chat to other people about vintage telly, you can do. All you need to do is go onto our Twitter page, and it's our which is www.twitter.com/@Benji and Nick, or just go on Twitter, Benji and Nick, whatever, /Benji and Nick, and pinned in our post at the top is a link to our Discord. So you'll be able to get in there, you see. So that will stay there.
Clever.
It's open for everybody. So come and join us.
Yes. So
I suppose now it's time to talk about the Creekster, Jonathan Creek. Shelley, what is it all about?
I will tell you. It's a mouthful, too. Jonathan Creek is a long-running British mystery crime drama series produced by the BBC and written by David Renwick. The series ran from 1997 on and off through 2016. It stars Alan Davies as the title character, who works as a creative consultant to a stage magician while also teaming up with Maddie Magellan, played by Carolyn Quentin, who is an investigative journalist who specializes in unsolvable crimes. Together, they go about solving seemingly supernatural mysteries, utilizing his talent for logical deduction and his understanding of illusions. And what we watched was the first episode, which is called The Wrestler's Tomb, which is the name of the house that the artist, who is found dead in his home, played by Colin Baker in a fantastic ponytail, by the way.
Yes.
The prime suspect is the artist's wife, who has a solid alibi of being in her office with her assistant right outside the door. Jonathan and Maddie are on the case to solve the seemingly unsolvable murder. Dun dun dun. So that was what we watched.
Very good fun. Very good fun. I like Jonathan Creek, always have done. It's been around as long as I can remember on ITV in the evenings.
It's
not
BBC.
Every day. Is it BBC or BBC, whatever it is? It's on in the evenings.
It's on the telly.
I always associate these programmes with ITV for some reason, but of course, yeah, it is BBC. But, I think there's a certain level of class to it. The poor bloke, though, spent his entire life ever since being chucked into the same barrel as Doctor Who, but he's just fab, isn't
Alan
he?
Davies.
Yeah. What did you think of it, Shelley? What's your views on it all?
To be honest, just watching the first episode, I thought it was just meh, the first episode. But
wow, okay.
I'm going to defend myself in that. I did go on and watch the second episode and absolutely fell in love with it. So just based on the first episode, you can't really get a grasp on, because I just feel like it wasn't set up well enough to really know if you should like these people first of all. I don't even know if I'm supposed to like either one of them. And I was confused, wondering what was in it for him to help her. And it wasn't a very successful, it wasn't interesting enough for me to care about who killed ponytailed Colin Baker, who was cheating on his wife. So he was a despicable person. And it's not one of those murders that you're just like, well, do I really want to know? Nah. I wrote down a funny, most of them are, there's tons of whodunits out there. But for me, this was a who cares? Yeah, no one laughed.
Yeah, that's an interesting point.
That's why I wasn't going to tell the joke. Sorry,
well, we
I did,
agree
everybody.
With you, I mean, yeah, that's a really interesting point. I never considered that you have to care about the murder victim. That's interesting. It's mostly. This is presented as a sort of. It's meant to be a slightly eccentric program. So it's to do with the intellectual process of solving the crime, and no bones about it. Colin Baker's character is presented as he's an arsehole, and also his wife's horrid. So you've got two horrid people, one of whom might be accused of murdering the other horrid person, and we don't care either way. And this is the thing I wanted to say, was that I never liked Jonathan Creek. I've hardly ever watched it, and whenever I did watch bits of it, I just found it pappy in middle of the road and awful. And I was having that, and I suddenly remembered all those negative feelings as I was watching it. But as I messaged Benji about it, once Alan Davis and Caroline Quentin, once that relationship starts to kick in, and it's when they went for the Indian meal, I think, which is about halfway through the episode, and she does that thing of saying, "What he said, you're not interested." What is it? He says, "You're not interested in me," or something.
Oh no, he says outside. He said, "Can I just stop you?" He said, "Are you actually interested in sleeping with me? I need to know. I need to know now. I'm not very good at talking out or reading the signs, so just tell me if you are or if you aren't."
And what does she say?
She says something like,
"Oh, it's very particular."
She says something like, "I'm not interested whatsoever in seeing you naked, sleeping with you, or seeing any member of your anatomy," or something like that. All in front of this bloke on the door as well.
That's right. The Indian guy standing there, kind of looking. Fair enough. Yeah, and it's at that point that suddenly it became an interesting drama, because those two characters were sort of intriguing, and the relationship with them was it. And then you suddenly realise how clever Alan Davis's character was. I do feel there's something wrong with this series, and I always felt this. I mean, Alan Davis, was he a comedian first who then got the opportunity to be an actor, or what? Right, yeah. Because what he's doing that thing of someone who is thinking, God, I don't want to go over the top. I want to do... And I feel that his acting is under the bottom. He is not acting enough most of the time. He's being so nothing that I want there to be more of a performance there. She gives... And I think she gives slightly over-animated performance to compensate for his complete lack of performance. But that said, I did warm to it, and I thought I found it intriguing how clever he was. I love that bit when he did all the dummies to show how
he made the little scale
he'd
model
reconstructed the murder scene
of The Office. It was
fantastic. That was a lovely scene. Yeah. Also, there's a moment when I can see why people are always saying, oh, he'd make a good Doctor Who, because when she first goes he lives in a windmill, and she first goes into his room, and the music's all sort of, oh, what's going on? And it's weird, and it's a bit like a companion going into the TARDIS for the first time and saying, what is this place? It's incredible. Don't you think, Benji? It's got that vibe about it.
Oh, it has, because it's an impressively beautiful building, and it's all full of curiosities, isn't it? Because he's a bit of a sort of, a bit of a wizard, a bit of a sort of... I think the thing about Jonathan Creek as a character in general is he's meant to be a sort of... He's obviously very clever, but he's a bit of a nomad, and he's a bit of a Burke as well.
Yes.
And so when you put it all together, his lack of charisma, I think, is part of that, almost that understated genius sort of element to him, that you think, God, this guy's really good, but he's just such a Burke, really. you know.
Yes.
Whereas she's really good at kind of being the sidekick, you know, in that. And
Well,
she,
she's
like
very
you say,
dominant, though, isn't she, as well?
She is, but I think that's part of her charm, isn't it? That she's sort of, she's very dominant, very in your face. But again, fantastic comedy actress.
Well,
really
I have to say
great timing.
that I found a newspaper article that says that David Renwick actually created this for her.
Wow.
Really?
I'm going to just read the billed as the BBC. This is from The Independent, May 6, 1997. Billed as the BBC's big spring drama, Jonathan Creek comes from the pen of David Renwick, who, thanks to One Foot in the Grave, is just about the hottest comedy writer in town. He created it specifically for Quentin, having been knocked flat, it seems, by a typically bravura display of hers in her own front room. She says, David came round to discuss a project with Paul, her first husband.
Is that Paul Merton?
Yeah. I was meant to be doing good wife work, but I couldn't keep it up and ended up getting drunk and showing off. 6 months later, these scripts arrived for me, which cheesed Paul off to no end. But so, yeah, he fell in love with her as a person, and he created this character for her. So, and it was interesting, most of the stuff when I was doing my research, it was just all about Jonathan Creek and that character and that actor and da-da-da. And I kept thinking, but she's more of a star, you know, I mean, they're on equal footing as far as I'm concerned, the characters.
Absolutely.
But she doesn't get, when in any of the press or any of the articles, she doesn't get nearly as much recognition.
I think it's because it's called Jonathan Creek, though, and so
Right.
people assume that the centerpiece is Jonathan Creek. Whereas if it was called something, I don't know, like the such and such mystery, or just, I don't know, Creek or something.
Yeah, but well, I guess you're right.
Creek in the
just
Night.
based on the title, but still, she just, her character is just as important as the Jonathan Creek character.
Yeah, because it's about the relationship and the different way, and she brings the cases to him, I imagine, is what happens.
Yeah, and having watched the second episode, I do see that their chemistry as actors, not as characters, but as actors, their chemistry is much better. It's more free flowing, and they're definitely getting into their stride. They're figuring it out in the first episode, which I think is what kind of made me go.
But the characters are figuring it out as well, aren't they? It's
right,
not,
exactly.
Exactly. Yeah.
So
why
they get
did she
more
leave?
comfortable.
Because she did leave, didn't she? How many years of it did she do?
So she did. She was in it from 1997 to 2000.
Right.
And what does she do after that? Let's find out. I mean, the thing is, she's fantastic. You know, she
did Men Behaving Badly as
which
well.
I love. I love Men Behaving Badly. Always have done. She left. So let's have a look. After that, she didn't act for. She didn't do much in that year. Her next job was in 2001. She was in The Innocent, a 2-part series. I wonder if she just wanted to be the main star herself. She started doing some TV films, and then in 2003 she got the lead, I think, in Blue Murder.
Right, I've never seen that.
Which is, she plays DCI Janine Lewis. So I guess maybe it was that, just being like, I want to do my own thing.
Who did she get replaced by?
She got replaced by, they've had so many different assistants now.
She got replaced by more glamorous women, is what I'm going to say.
Julia Sawala, who did it from 2001 to 2004. Sheridan Smith, 2009 to 2013. And Sarah Alexander from 2013 to 2016. I don't think, is it still, do they even still make Jonathan Creeks?
No, I think
the last one they did is 2016.
Yeah, but I did see something that what is it, Alan Davies? Is that his name?
Yep.
I totally just blanked on. I'm like, Davies? No. He is interested in doing it through, where was it? 2024. Davis wants to keep playing Creek until at least 2024, although there's no official news of any more Jonathan Creek episodes yet.
Why 2024? Is that?
That's just what it says.
That's
what I read.
I mean, the thing is, it still gets good ratings, actually. Just looking through now, I mean, its last it got 7 million in 2016 for its last run, and before that it was getting consistent kind of 8 million.
Those are good figures in this country, Shelley. Just let you know.
I can imagine. Yeah.
I mean, it's not reached its peak in 1999 to 2000, which was 11.45 million. But then that was different times then. That
fewer
was
channels.
But in a modern climate, I would say 7.28 million for Jonathan Creek, which I don't think is that much of it's not an expensive production really.
Well, it is very classy, isn't it?
It's classy, but it's not expensive. Do you know what I mean? It's not set on a spaceship with a million things going on. It's just a guy solving a mystery in a windmill. But there is a level of, lovely... It's just nice. I think it has all the wonderful ingredients, the windmill, the characters. It's got that fantastic comedy, that humour that Caroline Quentin is known for. That sort of slightly dry... sort of not afraid to make a fool of herself, and he's really good in it, and he really comes into his own later on. I really enjoy it. It's one of those things, if it's on and you catch it early on enough, you can just slot in and enjoy it.
I'll be honest with you, I remember it being on, and I was a grown-up, and I just always thought, I don't know what all the fuss is about. I don't know why people think this is so good, because it's just middle of the road in capital letters. But then watching it, having to watch it, if I hadn't have had to watch it, I would have given up before I got halfway, because I just found it dull. I think it is very, very well made. It seems horribly dated as well. I expected it to feel more modern than it does.
I always remember it being dated,
right?
From watching it years later.
Of course, I don't know. You were too young to watch it in 1997, weren't you?
Yeah,
were you not born? No, you were born.
Of course, I was born. Yeah, I was too young to, I guess, remember it. But yeah, interesting fun fact here: the coat that he wears in that was his own coat, and he wore it to the audition. And they said, "Love what you're wearing. You can wear. That's Jonathan Creek." And so he ended up wearing his own coat. And I always like things like that. That's a nice little...
Well, Jonathan Creek is actually a real place in Kentucky, in America. David Renwick was driving through and saw that and decided to keep he was like, I like that name. And then he ended up utilizing it for
I kept confusing it with the famous wine brand, which is Jacob's Creek.
Jacob's Creek, yeah.
The number of times I said to people, have you seen that program, Jacob's Creek? And they think,
no,
it's Jonathan, Nick. It's not Jacob's.
Jacob's Creek. That's the wine, you alky.
It's always thinking of a bottle of wine instead of a TV program.
Because I think one of the reasons that I think I like this is because I really love One Foot in the Grave. I've always been a fan of that as a comedy. I think that's superbly written. And so it's the same guy, David Renwick, is responsible for that as well.
Yes.
So
I just discovered that I was researching David Renwick, and I saw that, and I saw that show, they did an American version of it very loosely, and that was the Cosby Show.
Oh gosh,
Cosby Show is One Foot in the Grave.
Cosby, not it's called Cosby. There was two different, I guess. There was the Cosby Show, and then there was Cosby, which I thought was I was like, what? So then
I had no idea they were the same. Yeah, they were similar.
But apparently it was very loose.
Yeah, very. I imagine
very loose. But I One Foot in the Grave is on BritBox, so I just add that to my watch list so I could see, because I didn't even know what it was. So.
Well, David Renwick also did one of my most loathed sitcoms of all time, which is Slinger's Day.
I've never heard of it.
Oh, it's dreadful. It is. David Renwick did one episode of it. It's this dreadful comedy about a bloke who owns a supermarket. Bruce Forsyth owns a supermarket, basically, and it's diabolical. It's a continuation of Tripper's Day, which has had Leonard Rossiter.
Leonard Rossiter.
I always say that.
Like a musketeer.
It's my French accent.
But dreadful load of old rubbish it is. Absolutely diabolical.
Controversially, I did fairly. I mean, everyone in the UK had to watch One Foot in the Grave because there was such a noise about it. Everyone, oh, it's amazing, it's amazing. And I always watched it and sometimes quite enjoyed it, but kind of again thought, I'm not quite sure what all the fuss is about. This isn't that good. It's okay. It's just a little bit middle of the road. It's neither one thing nor another. But no, there's great moments in One Foot in the Grave. But I never loved it. Yeah. I'd never quite got why the country went so insane about it, because there was a point where everyone talked about One Foot in the Grave all the time, and I was just thinking, oh, I better watch it because everyone seems to be talking about it all the time. A bit like Big Brother, when Big Brother first started. I thought, what is all this rubbish? But eventually you had to watch it, otherwise you wouldn't be able to communicate with other human beings you knew, because everyone was talking about it,
I actually thought that would be a fun show for us to do, which would be a show about overrated TV shows, series that, because there are so many that just in America, it's like, oh, have you watched? Like, no, now just on principle, I'm not going to watch.
Well, like The Wire. Everyone says you have to watch The Wire.
And that is one it's on one of the streaming services, and I never watched it when it was on because it wasn't something that was interesting to me. It wasn't. And so, but after all these years of, it's the greatest show and blah, 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 I started watching it, and it's like, okay, it's okay. And then I'd get through the first series, and I was like, all right, I made it through that, let's keep going. And I always just go away from it. And then I think I should go back to that.
It's a problem, isn't it, when you've heard something so good, because you expect, I think we all like TV series. Let's see if this is true for you folks. If you discover it and you don't know much about it and you start to learn about it, you go, oh, I like this. Whereas if loads of people have told you it's the best thing since sliced bread, you're kind of like, is it though?
But that's me in a nutshell.
I've tried to watch The Wire so many times, and I get 5, 10 minutes in, 15 minutes in, I just go, ugh. This is meant to be transformative. I'm meant to be in paroxysms. I'm meant to think this is incredible, and I just don't.
Every episode I go into it going, maybe this is the episode that's going to make me go, oh, I see it now. And it just hasn't yet. And again, I'm only in I think I'm in the third series. It's been so long since I tried watching.
It's like Lost. Don't bother. Benji, you were going to say something. I cut you off. You said, this is me.
I'm exactly the same though. It's when people say, watch this, watch that, as you know, I just don't because I like to one day be like, I'll watch this, rather than when people say, oh, you must watch, it's like Game of Thrones. Like, oh, you would love Game of Thrones, you must watch Game of Thrones, you must watch it. And I was like, well, I'm not going to watch it now that you keep telling me I should watch it. Yes, and then of course when I got round to watching it myself, absolutely, I loved it. I think it was fantastic. But it's like, I'm not going to do it just because because it just puts me off. I think
you're sort of uncooperative, is what you're saying.
So I just can't be bothered. I can't be bothered with people telling me what. I don't want to be part of the crowd.
But they just want to share it with you. That's the thing. That's
of course.
But yeah, I know exactly what you mean. It does create pressure. Other series I feel like that about are The West Wing. Although I did watch an episode of it and thought it was amazing, but I didn't. Buffy the Vampire Slayer, which I've only ever seen one episode of and thought it was pretty good, but just couldn't be bothered to watch anymore. What's the other big one? Oh, I keep wanting to say the Giovannis. That's not what it is it? What is it called? The
Sopranos.
The Giovannis.
The Sopranos. I thought, I don't want to watch.
Insert generic Italian name here.
That's exactly what I was going to say.
The pizzerias.
Those Italian blokes. The Giovanni. We'll do them.
Terrible. I'm so sorry. I'd like to apologise to any Italian people listening. Do you see what I mean? I just don't. I can't be bothered with those.
Not your cup of tea. But
I'm sure it would be. But I'm just.
But you like what you like, and I think we all do. We all like what we like, and we're not all going to like everything.
The podcast ended.
It ended
because there was no point talking about it anymore.
That's the message, isn't it? And talking about what we like, what stars are we giving for this? Actually, interestingly.
I'm gonna go ahead, Benj.
Oh, sorry. No, I give it a 4 because I really enjoyed it. But it's not groundbreaking. Like it hasn't it doesn't. I don't watch and think, gosh, this changed the landscape of television, because it didn't. But or I'm not in love with it as a show, but I think it's really good and I really enjoy watching it. So 4 stars, I think is solid.
I'm gonna go with 3 exclamation marks.
Cool.
Because even though I didn't particularly like the first episode, I did enjoy the second one much more, and I will continue to watch it. So just the fact that I care enough to keep watching it, because it is something I enjoy. I do enjoy that kind of crime show where there's like a slightly different, like an offbeat person who uses some weird talent to solve crimes.
Yeah.
Like there was a bunch here in America. There was, there was a show called Psych where he was like a fake psychic just because he had these like incredible powers of observation, but he was like a police consultant, things like that. I love those kinds of shows.
What was that
so
one with the woman
going.
who was psychic and really genuinely was? Arquette.
Oh, Patricia Arquette. Was it called Medium?
Yes. Yeah.
Yes.
Supposed
that's
large
based on
or
a real woman. That's that the character that Patricia Arquette played was an actual woman who was a psychic
I watched
who
quite
helped
a
the
lot.
police.
Yeah, I watched quite a
I
lot
like
of
that
that.
show.
Yeah, I liked it. But that was because I discovered it was shown late at night in a nothing slot on British television. I think it was even on the BBC. And I just thought, oh, this is interesting. Yeah, I think Gary Russell and I sort of formed a bond over that at some point as well. We both loved a bit of Medium. Yes. First of all, I wonder whether I don't think we're ever going to get Benji to conform to the format of the show and talk about exclamation marks. But no, it's fine. You're a non-conformist.
Did you
I
notice how I did?
Yeah. So
Because
make
he did it. I was
make
like-
it triangles. I don't know.
Tortillas.
What are those? What?
Tortilla chips.
Tortillas. I didn't hear what you said. Yeah, I suppose I'm going to give it 3. I did go into episode 2 as well. And my favourite bit at the beginning of episode 2 is when this person had been freed from prison after 9 years and their case dismissed for murdering. And the wife was saying, and here I have a cheque for £100,000 to sell our story to the newspapers.
And Maddie's face.
And she's, you can see, Maddie's like,
She's like drooling.
This is incredible.
Because
She said,
Maddie's the reason.
They did this to us, and she tears it up, and her trying not to look crestfallen in front of the press.
Because Maddie's the reason he got released from prison.
Yeah.
She used her investigative journalism to just,
but that was
disprove the prosecution's case.
That was incredible. Yes.
Yeah.
That was incredible acting from Caroline Quentin there.
Yeah,
that was,
she's just
that
sitting
was a
there like
superb
looking at her
moment,
going,
She's great.
What do you
She's
mean?
got-
No, and because she knows she's about to rip it up, and she's like, but wait,
Yeah.
no, don't. That's my money.
I think that she doesn't know she's going to rip it up until she rips it. I think she's suspecting that look on her face when she's thinking she's going to rip it up. Oh
Yeah.
Christ, that's 100. I could have had like 10% of that.
Yeah.
Anyway, it also has Maureen O'Brien in it. But I got bored after about 15 minutes. I was just like, oh no, I can't. I thought we're off. This is Jonathan. Anyway, so 3 stars probably. Yeah.
Solid.
So I've said stars.
Yeah, you nonconformist.
I'm the only one who
I don't
got
think
it
we're ever
right.
going to get Nick to be able to conform to
Touche,
the
Monsieur
rule of this
Pussycat.
podcast.
Yes.
Well, thank you all for listening and
what are we gonna do
checking
next
in
week?
on
What are we
us.
doing next week?
Next week we're going to do Bergerac, I think, because we were talking about it earlier on. I think it'd be fun, don't you?
Damn.
Don't you? Well, we might as well. Bergerac.
Look at Shelley. Bergerac. What?
Bergerac.
Can I speak with my French accent?
Bergerac.
Well, it is set in the Channel Islands where they speak English.
English.
All the names
then
are
I
French.
will-
All the road names and everything are French.
Okay.
Chateau.
And what's the
Mange
department he
Tout.
works for? Bureau des étrangers.
See, that's French.
That's
There
the
you go.
bureau for
Outrageous.
foreigners, basically.
Bureau de change. Well,
Bureau de change.
that's where he works.
You're just randomly saying French words now. Comment ça va? Vous avez
Bureau
des
de
oignons?
change is, I think,
A
to do with
baguette.
money, isn't it? The bank or something. Love it. Okay, then. Well, thank you so much, everybody, for tuning in. And if you are part of the Patreon, we'll see you at our after party in a moment. And
What about-
if you're not on the Patreon, then check us out.
What about emailing in podcast@nicholasbriggs.com?
Yeah, send them in. Get your emails in. What
Tell
do you
us,
think of
yeah.
Jonathan Creek? What
Yeah.
What do you think is the definitive crime drama? I say that. And I
And
mean
do you
that in
think
a
it
kind
should
of
be
mystery.
exclamation marks, stars, aubergines, tortilla chips? What do you think it should be?
Pieces of 8.
Plus
Goodbye.
VAT. Bye.
All right. Well, go to nicholasbriggs.com/shop for all of your fan merch needs. That's bye from me.
Merch needs. That's
Merch
bye from me. Pressing stop now. Ka-ching.